Bonjour Patrice.
Bonjour Grégoire.
Relais l'intro. Welcome to Passions of the Geeks, the show in which two friends and fellow geeks talk about geek and pop culture and everything else they enjoy. I'm Greg.
And I am Pat.
And let's get on with the show. Hello, Pat. How are you doing?
Oh, hello, Greg. I'm doing fine. Really looking forward to this episode today.
As always.
As always.
We have I think we have an interesting topic to cover today. We are going to talk about Jules Verne, the French science fiction author. But before we do that, we have, two really tiny items of follow-up. First of all, there needs to be a correction. I made a mistake last week, or in the last episode.
Impossible.
Very unlikely, but apparently not impossible. Well, wasn't really a mistake, so I wasn't sure whether the soundtrack to Total Recall was composed by Jerry Goldsmith or Basil Polidoris. It's Jerry Goldsmith. I should have known that, or I should have been sure about that. That's first thing. Second thing, listening to the episode, I caught myself saying or announcing the track, the St. Crispin speech from Henry VIII. It's obviously Henry V, which is so embarrassing being an English minor, but okay. So yeah, Henry V.
No, I didn't get that either.
Yeah, but it's Henry V, not the VIII one.
Of course.
Completely different people. So those are kind of two things that needed correction. And another little piece of follow-up, one of our listeners wrote in, and we have first-hand confirmation that the Uncharted movie is actually shooting in Babelsberg. So apparently, what I heard, they put up a set of some forest, jungle-like forest or something. So it's either that or Matrix 4 is set in the jungle. So no, it's the Uncharted movie with Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg. So yeah. Definitely shooting. We have first-hand confirmation about that. Okay, let's talk some news. Do you have any interesting news you want to share with us?
Oh, yeah. Earlier this month, CBS announced a new Star Trek animated series called Lower Decks. And they made a trailer, and I watched it. And, let's just say I have questions. First, I don't think that making an animated Star Trek series is a bad idea. Quite the contrary, actually. Animation can provide a fantastic way to tell stories that is very hard with live action otherwise. And I guess most people know about the original animated series of Star Trek that kind of functioned as a fourth season of the original series. And the animation wasn't that great, and it focused maybe a bit too much on children, in my opinion. But they made a couple of really good episodes, and they were trying things that they couldn't do with live action means. And maybe CBS thought that Discovery was too dark and gritty, and so they went completely the other way. And this is where I'm kind of confused. There is nothing against humor in Star Trek. There's a lot of silliness in the original series and in Next Generation, and even in Deep Space Nine. It has so many lighthearted moments, but it's always balanced with thought-provoking stories and interesting, serious characters. And judging by the trailer, I really don't know who the target audience is. It looks like a cross between, I don't know, Rick and Morty and South Park with very strange humor. Have you seen the trailer?
I've seen the trailer, and I get where you're coming from. I think looking at it from a different point of view, kind of from point of view of CBS, and kind of that they're trying to make their streaming service more attractive. Mm-hmm. I kind of see where they're coming from. Mm-hmm. They have the Star Trek license, and they want to do stuff with it. And they have the live action Star Trek shows. They have Discovery, which is returning for another season. Picard is supposed to return for another season. And I think with this animated show, they're trying to, I think they either try to get Trekkies who also love Rick and Morty, or they're trying to get people who don't like Star Trek but like stuff like Rick and Morty or South Park through this comedy into mood that this is Star Trek. It was kind of funny. Maybe I check out some other Star Trek show as well. And that's how they try to keep them or lure them onto their service. And I look at it more from that point of view.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I certainly would give the show a try. I certainly watched the pilot. But I just felt that it feels more like a satire of Star Trek or a persiflage, not like the real thing. The kind of jokes they're making, at least in the trailer. And I know trailers are hard to make, and they probably put together all the funny stuff or what whoever thinks is the funny stuff. But it kind of does not feel like Star Trek. It feels like it would be another show that kind of rips off Star Trek. And the thing is, I like the ship design that they made. I like the way they used these new uniforms. It's actually a canon uniform that sort of has been introduced with the Countdown comic before they went to the Kelvin timeline. Lower Decks has a lot of potential because the Lower Decks episode of TNG was awesome. It was a really good episode. I just think that episode actually shows pretty well why it wouldn't work as a series, because there is no decision making going on by the main characters. And this is a little bit sad for a Star Trek series. But I see where you're coming from, and I'm really interested what they're doing with it.
I mean, as I said before, I see where you're coming from, but it's because it's not the only Star Trek show. I'm kind of okay with it.
Yeah.
If this is the only Star Trek I'm getting, I'm really upset.
Okay, yeah.
But if it's just some other, and I think Star Trek fandom, and I think the Star Trek is big enough to have a show that makes fun of Star Trek itself.
Okay.
And that's what I see it as. It's not canon. It's kind of separate, but it's Star Trek jokes that hopefully they're funny.
Yeah, hopefully.
And if they deliver some funny jokes, I'm okay with it. And for example, I really loved all the Star Trek jokes in Futurama.
Yeah, sure.
And if they're only half as good as those, I mean, okay, most of the good Futurama Star Trek jokes were meta jokes, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, other than that.
No, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what they're doing with it. Yeah. How about you, Greg?
Well, a couple of episodes ago, in episode 4, I already talked about how the pandemic is affecting release dates right and left. And yeah, last week or this week, some other big changes were announced or are happening now. So apparently the movie summer is officially gone. All major releases have been either postponed to next year or later in the year, or postponed indefinitely so that they don't even have a release date. I think it doesn't make sense to go through all these changes. The big ones are that Disney, for example, just postponed all the Star Wars and Avatar movies just for 1 year. So I think at this point, the last Avatar movie is supposed to come out in 2028. Or something, and it just seems so far away, and it's just ridiculous. One other big thing is Tenet. When is the next Christopher Nolan movie, Tenet, coming out? And it's also one of those movies that doesn't have an international date anymore. Right now, it kind of looks like that we in Europe might actually be getting it earlier than the Americans. Maybe late August, early September, if we're lucky. Strangely, the local film festival in Vaduz still has it on its program for August 13. And I'm not sure if they just forgot to take it off, because if it works out, that might actually be a world premiere.
Yeah, it's true. And I'll be there.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll totally be there. But yeah, that's kind of the bad news. The good news, Bill and Ted Face the Music moved around a little bit as well. But the movie is supposed to come out September 1st in selected theaters and on video on demand. And if there's a theater close by that plays it, or if it's somewhere on video on demand, I'm so going to be there for that.
Party on, dudes.
Party on, be excellent to each other. I'm so there for all those movies. I loved Excellent Adventure.
Yeah.
Bogus Journey is so cool. I'm pretty sure I'm really going to miss George Carlin as Rufus.
Oh, yeah.
That's the one sore spot. But other than that, Bill and Ted, Face the Music, I'm so gonna be there to face that movie.
Oh, yeah.
No matter where or under what circumstances. Yeah. I'm really excited about that one, actually. Yeah. You're a Bill and Ted fan as well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're now in 2020, and we really need a song to unite the world now more than ever. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I have to say, Keanu Reeves, he doesn't have to do this movie. I'm getting the vibe he wants to do it. And this feels great.
Yeah. I think I watched the trailer, and I think you get the feeling that they enjoyed making this one.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not sure if calling it a labor of love is adequate, but I think they enjoyed themselves, and I hope that translates to the screen.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, moving on. So, Pat, do you have anything interesting for our listeners to check out this week?
Well, I thought I'd check out a little game I wanted to very briefly talk about, and that game is called Octopath Traveler. It's a game I have played, I think, last year when it was released for the PC. It was actually earlier released for the Switch. I recently bought a Switch for my son and installed Octopath Traveler for him, and he's enjoying the game a lot. And so I thought I'd make a little shout out to that small game. It's a turn-based role-playing game, JRPG, a Japanese RPG. And it sort of fills a gap between the classic 16-bit JRPGs and the modern ones. It tells a wonderful story about 8 different main characters. That's why it's called Octopath Traveler. And it controls like a 16-bit game, but just with all the modern comforts that you can imagine. And it sort of has a pixelized look, but it's still in a 3D environment that uses some tilt shifting and blur effects to make it look like a 3D diorama. So it's a very cool game. It's very text heavy, has great stories, a very intricate battle system. My son enjoys it immensely. Have you played it?
I haven't played it, no, but it sounds like fun.
Yeah.
But I like older style RPGs or JRPGs. Yeah, sounds fun. It's on the Switch store, obviously, Nintendo eStore, obviously.
Yeah, it's on the Nintendo eShop and on Steam. So it's for Switch and PC. Check it out.
Yeah, okay.
What about you?
Well, I played an action adventure with some Japanese stylings as well this week. I played the new release PS4 exclusive Ghost of Tsushima by Sucker Punch. Have you heard of Ghost of Tsushima?
Only very briefly.
As I said, it's the new game by Sucker Punch. It's action adventure, and you play a samurai in late 13th century Japan. And it's gorgeous, and it's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. I've just finished the campaign, actually, and I'm now completing some of the side missions and stuff like that. And it's just riding through feudal Japan, being a samurai, or kind of in this case, you're actually kind of as part of the story. You're moving away from being a samurai who just focuses on honor and just facing your enemies head on. You kind of become kind of an assassin or thief-like character as well. Well, that's the ghost in the title. So you kind of at the end of the game, you're you're kind of becoming this super samurai who defeats samurai code and or fights dirty. But the fighting system is just a lot of fun, and it's really, really gory. Basically, when you actually kill a person, you just slide your sword through him. And currently I have a white armor, and after 10 seconds in a fight, the armor is not white anymore. It's either dirty from the ground or much more likely red from the blood. And it's not for kids, obviously, but I really enjoy the gameplay. I really enjoy the setting. The story is set during the Mongol invasion, so you have to fight the Mongols. And I have to admit, kind of games like Horizon Zero Dawn or The Witcher, their story captured me more. Mm-hmm. But the fighting was as fun as it was, for example, in God of War. Mm-hmm. I think this game is really there to have those samurai fights, and you really feel powerful like a samurai. And kind of the learning curve is really interesting as well, because as the game progresses, you learn different sword techniques. You can actually unleash special attacks, and as kind of part of a story mission, the moment you become the Ghost of Tsushima, you get this new ability where you can just kill enemies with one strike with your sword. And you just feel so powerful. It's what game wish fulfillment is supposed to be like. For 25 hours, you can feel like a samurai. And isn't that why we play video games?
It sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I just watched the trailer. And I'm still thinking about whether I will buy it for the PS4 or it's not clear if it will be released for PC and I will buy it there. But I think it is supposed to be a PS4 exclusive and stay that.
Yeah.
So I definitely will buy that at a later time.
I mean, I'm almost finished with it. Well, maybe I can lend you the disc if you want.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
You can try it out. So that was Ghost of Tsushima, a video game. And the second thing I checked out this week, and I'm highly encouraging everyone to do that as well, is the new movie Palm Springs that was released on video on demand. Here's the thing. I don't know what I should tell people who have no idea what Palm Springs is. It's a movie with Andy Samberg and Christine Milioti, and J.K. Simmons is in it as well. Kind of a bunch of actors. Basically, it's a romantic comedy, and there is a twist there, or kind of one of the conceits of the story. And yeah, I'm gonna say it because it happens in the first 5 minutes. It's a Groundhog Day movie.
Oh, okay.
But it kind of changes up the formula a little bit. And yeah, if you like Groundhog Day movies, which are officially a genre now. So we have the original Groundhog Day. We have Palm Springs. A couple of years ago, we had those horror movies, Happy Death Day.
Oh, yeah.
That had the same premise. So it's officially a genre now. And I think Palm Springs is definitely a really cool version of that premise. Or of that genre. And I think so far it's probably the best movie I watched this year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, there haven't been that many movies this year, obviously, but I think it's probably one of the best movies this year. So Palm Springs, I highly recommend that one.
I will check that out. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to our story of the week, our main topic.
Yeah.
You'll probably noticed listening to us through the cold open that we talked a little bit of French. Well, not sure if one can consider that French, but yeah, I just hope that my former French teacher did not listen to this. But we decided today to talk about one of our favorite science fiction authors. And it happened to be a French author who died 115 years ago. Obviously, we're talking about Jules Verne or Jules Verne, or however you want to call it, the French novelist who was born in 1828, died in 1905. And yeah, at least for some, he's probably one of the fathers or originators of science fiction, of the science fiction genre, together with H.G. Wells and Hugo Gernsback. He basically invented that genre.
Yeah. Even though he himself, he didn't like to be called the inventor of science fiction. He was always the one who said, I don't write science fiction, I write science possibilities. So he didn't see himself as a science fiction novelist, but he was one.
I mean, that's kind of a discussion to have whether possibilities are fictions as well.
Yeah.
I think most of his stories are grounded in reality and just explore what's possible within that reality and just, kind of shift the borders a little bit further away. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, there are obviously works of his, I mean, like From the Earth to the Moon and stuff like that. I would call that science fiction.
Oh, yeah.
Building a cannon and shooting something to the moon. Technically, that's a possibility, but that's definitely science fiction as well. Just a few things about him. While researching for today, I didn't know that he's the second most translated author in the world. Do you know who the most translated one is?
Well, at the top of my head, I would have said the Bible, but I guess this one does not count.
I think it doesn't count, no. So, most translated author is Agatha Christie, which kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And in third place is William Shakespeare.
Okay.
So yeah, that's according to Wikipedia, so I have no idea if it's true, but yeah, I think I found it fitting that Jules Verne is between Agatha Christie and William Shakespeare.
Yeah, it just underlines his importance.
Exactly, yeah. So, I mean, what does Jules Verne, what does he mean to you? How was your first contact with him? How did you get into sci-fi or French science fiction or science possibilities literature?
Yeah, well, I have to admit that my first encounter with Jules Verne wasn't with a book, sadly. It was with the 1950s movies. We will talk about them a little bit later. But during my time in school, I read a lot of books. And actually, it was, again, the teacher I have told about that showed us how to read comics. The same teacher actually showed us Jules Verne with sort of abbreviated stories, which is interesting because his books aren't that long. But still, they were sized for young readers. So this was my first introduction. And the first one was Journey to the Center of the Earth. What about you?
I think it's similar. I did not have that cool teacher. At some point, I need to ask you who that was. But it was for me. I loved reading, especially in primary school and later on. And those Jules Verne books, they were just right up my alley. And I'm not entirely sure which one was my first one, but I'm pretty sure that Journey to the Center of the Earth was one of the first ones as well. And I think to this day, I'm still really fascinated by that book. And it's kind of part of this amazing journey trilogy or series of books with Journey to the Center of the Earth, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Around the World in 80 Days, The Mysterious Island, I think, belongs into that as well.
Yeah.
And I just love those books and the spirit of adventure and kind of following smart people, how they how they encounter problems and try to solve them. And I just, as a kid, and I have to admit, I haven't reread a lot of them. As a kid, I just found them really compelling, suspenseful. And yeah, it was just, I remember them as being page turners. I always wanted to know how they continue. Mm-hmm. And yeah, as you said before, I watched those movies as well. I think my love for sci-fi adventure movies, I think I love those movies because I love those novels.
Yeah, that's certainly part of it. If you rewatch the movies after you've read the novels, it's again something totally different. And I mean, these movies are older than I am. So I've seen them the first time at a very young age, and I didn't understand everything. And then later reading the books, they're about journeys, and you can follow them very, very easily. Most of these books don't have let's say, huge story arches. They're just about a journey the characters are doing and some puzzles they are solving. So they are really, really fun to read because you can solve the puzzles with them. They always need a bit of time to solve the puzzles, and you as the reader have the possibility to solve the puzzles with them. And in the version I had from Journey to the Center of the Earth, it was about translating runes. And there was a picture included of these runes. And I remember that I actually tried to translate these runes. And then it was backwards Latin, and I couldn't make heads or tails of it because I don't speak Latin or reverse Latin.
I did the exact same thing. I did it as well. Yeah, I was so fascinating that, you could try to solve it on your own.
Yeah.
And as you said before, I agree with you that kind of most of his characters, besides a few exceptions, are not that interesting, and they don't really have a character arc that they're going through, because in most cases they're just they're really intelligent and obsessed people in the beginning, and their obsession leads them through this adventure, and in the end they're obsessed people who just came back from an adventure.
Yeah,
that's basically it. I mean, they made some new friends maybe, and they learned something new.
Oh, yeah.
In most cases, they did not learn a character lesson.
Not much, no. Some of them are borderline assholes, at least at the beginning.
Borderline, yeah.
No, that was a lot of fun as a kid, and really, I think in real life, I'm fascinated with caves and stuff, and I think the main reason why I like caves so much is from reading Journey to the Center of the Earth.
I mean, should we dive into some of his books a little bit more specifically and talk about what we like about them?
Oh, yeah, certainly.
Because I prefer talking about works of fiction or literature specifically and not focus too much about the author and stuff like that. So yeah, let's start with Journey to the Center of the Earth. Well, I think apparently it's probably both of our favorites, I guess.
Yeah.
Because, and I mean, Obviously, I know, and even back then when I read it, I knew that it was ridiculous. And that kind of the whole concept of this book, that there is a hollow earth or whatever, that's just silly.
Some people still believe that.
Yeah, but okay, lizard folk and stuff like that. But the idea of there being a volcano in Iceland and there is a cave and you could just basically climb down and reach the center of the earth. It's just a really compelling idea.
Mm.
And it's, maybe we both read them first when we were in primary school. And I think that's kind of that's the age when you're in the woods and you find a cave or something. You want to explore that cave and you wonder where that cave leads to. And with a book like Journey to the Center of the Earth, you have a story that actually tells you where that cave leads to and what kind of adventure it would be. And I think that's, I mean, I mentioned it when I talked about Ghost of Tsushima. It's kind of adventure wish fulfilling. And I think that's what science fiction literature like this can do. And I think I was reading this Journey to the Center of the Earth. I was more obsessed with the climbing part and how they got down and stuff like that than with what they actually found down there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Kind of, obviously, kind of the dinosaurs were really cool, but
yeah,
I was more fascinated by how they crossed the ocean and things like that. So I was kind of how they made their journey and kind of the technical aspects of that were even more interesting to me than what they actually found.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the reveal at the end when they are spit out again by, I think it was Stromboli, the volcano in Italy, and how far they gotten under the earth, it was pretty cool when they came out. And they were in Italy.
Yeah, kind of from Iceland to Italy. That's two very different places.
Yeah, but as a child, the dinosaurs living under the earth, that was kind of cool. I think it also inspired a lot of other movies and books and a whole conspiracy theory.
A whole conspiracy theory, some other books, some other writers, some movies. I mean, obviously, I think kind of one of the movies that A Journey to the Center of the Earth obviously inspired one of my favorite bad movies ever, The Core.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to do an episode on The Core.
I think we need to, yes.
We're going to do an episode on The Core, a deep dive into The Core and why it's so awesome. But yeah, Journey to the Center of the Earth. You mentioned the movies before. Let's talk a little bit about the movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, Jules Verne in the 1950s, there were at least 3 movies: Journey to the Center of the Earth, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and Around the World in 80 Days, that were kind of made with the, I would say, kind of same level of expertise, same level of budget. And I think those 3 movies are actually very well renowned. They were quite successful, and people enjoyed them, and at least we did. And I think that movie about the journey to the center of the earth, I think, is still probably the definitive edition or the definitive movie version of the story.
Definitely, yes.
It stays pretty close to the movie, obviously, with the limitations of filmmaking at that time. They had to make some adjustments, but other than that, I think it's pretty close to the book, and it's one of those stories where the professor, as Littenbrock, as he's called in the movie, he's kind of he's a little bit of a dick, isn't he?
A little bit, yes. But so was his book counterpart.
Yeah, so was his book counterpart. So yeah, it's kind of not the most sympathetic characters, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I watched that movie recently, and I have to admit, I still enjoy it.
Yeah, it's very watchable. It has great handmade effects. It looks great. The addition of the female character, Arlene, I think was her name, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is a good way of adding something, and she fits very well in that group. They added a little bit of other stuff. I think they added Atlantis at the end as a big reveal of what Arne Sagnussen was actually looking for. I thought it was great. That is a really great movie. Very, very watchable.
Mm. Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. But I think I'm not sure which one is actually his most famous one. Is it 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, or is it Around the World in 80 Days? Which one would you consider more famous?
That's a good question, actually. I'm kind of torn between these two. I would say, in the end, just based on the movies that exist, it's probably Around the World in 80 Days. What will you say?
I think that the Nautilus and Captain Nemo are probably I think most people would kind of be familiar with those two names. Mm-hmm. And kind of that the Nautilus is the submarine and Captain Nemo is the captain. I think most people would be familiar with that. But I'm pretty sure no one can actually tell you the story.
Yeah.
Whereas I would say that Phileas Fogg and Passepartout, and they're maybe a little bit less famous than Nemo, but everyone can tell you the story of Around the World in 80 Days. I mean, it obviously helps that it's basically the title.
Yeah.
But I think that concept is just, people can immediately relate and connect to that concept. Mm. It's just, okay, it's back in the day when travel wasn't as easy, and this rich guy travels around the globe in 80 days. And reading up for today's episode, there were actually people back then who actually tried it and managed to do it, and 80 days was not that far off.
Yeah.
So it again, I think in this case, it's that's probably a case where Jules Verne earns himself the science possibility name, because it was possible to travel around the world with those means of transportation at that time. I think I prefer Around the World a little bit more than 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Mm-hmm. It's a more complete story, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of, as far as I remember, it's one of the few stories where the main character actually has an emotional arc and emotional journey as well.
Exactly, he grows.
I mean, he starts off as this very strict and kind of this guy basically trapped in his routine.
Yeah,
and kind of winning this wager is the most important thing in his life, and kind of the only thing that he basically is interested in. He's not interested in the places he visits. He's just interested in the journey. But in the end, obviously, because he finds love along the way and things like that, he obviously changes for the better. And I think that's what I found interesting about Around the World. It's, as you said before, it's probably it feels more complete than the other stories.
Yeah, as you said, Phileas Fogg, he grows as a character, and as you said, it's one of the few stories where characters actually grow. At the beginning, he's sort of a cross between, I would say in modern terms, between Sheldon Cooper and Monica Geller from Friends. He wants his routine, he's very strict, and he fires his butler because his bathing water
I think his tea, either the tea or the bathing water was too hot.
Yeah, 2 degrees or something.
Yeah, barely. So yeah.
Or the shaving water. I'm not sure anymore.
Yeah, something like that. Something very ridiculous.
I haven't reread all of his books for this podcast. So if there are any mistakes, please leave corrections in the comments. He becomes more warm-hearted. And yeah, as you said, he finds love with an Indian princess named Aouda, who I think is a very early example of a very cool female character. She starts out as a damsel in distress, but after that, she holds her own weight. She rescues Phileas one time, if I remember correctly. And in the end, she proposes to him and not the other way around. And it's because of that proposal that Phileas actually realizes that it's one day earlier than he thought it is, and he still manages to win his bet. So it's a pretty cool character.
Yeah, I think, now I didn't need to mention it. I mean, it's probably a good place to mention it as any. All his works, and he himself, he was a product of his time.
Yeah.
And obviously, I mean, Aouda is probably the only female character who's more than just a name. If there's women in these books, they're just the wives or the girlfriends who stay at home, or fiancés or whatever. And I think that's definitely one aspect where you can see that these stories are a little bit older. And I think the other aspect is it's very Eurocentric, and it's usually about Europeans exploring the world and going to places where they haven't been, and that's why they're discovering it. Mm-hmm. So I think from a modern point of view, some of these elements could be considered racist, and kind of the whole idea of the white savior who has to come in and either unearth this great mystery or help these indigenous wild people. I think if you were to translate these stories for modern audiences, you need to pay close attention how you do that, kind of to make sure that you kind of get away from this. I mean, it's in a way it's white male supremacy.
Yeah,
it's stories about rich, well-educated white guys who have adventures around the world, which in itself is at least I think it's a little bit problematic.
Yeah, you're certainly right. But as you said, it's a product of its time. Some of these stories are 150 years old. I mean, there are stories about natives that are cannibals and stuff. So these are just things that people believed back then, and that they didn't know better. Even Jules Verne did not know better.
Yeah.
And I mean, he had to sell these books. They had to fit a certain protagonist and antagonist role to sell them. But what he did is, even though he is French, his main characters are actually rarely French people. They're Englishmen, they're Germans, there are a couple of Americans. They're from all over the world, but yeah, in general it's very European centric.
Yeah, I think in the Journey to the Moon, they're French people, aren't they?
Yeah, but there are also 2 Americans.
Yeah, they're with the gunpowder.
Yeah.
I think if I remember correctly. Yeah, so kind of an international cast of characters.
Yes, it's
largely European. Yeah, largely European. And kind of the other question, kind of getting us to the other big work, or kind of the other big work of this amazing Journey series, the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And I think there is some debate where Captain Nemo actually comes from, because there are some versions of Captain Nemo where he's white, kind of clearly European. There are other versions of Captain Nemo where he's Asian, Indian, and stuff like that. And I always, I think if I picture him, I picture him as Asian, Captain Nemo. For me, he's kind of an outsider, and he's different to the people who come on his ship, and that's why I always pictured him being a different race.
Yeah.
And yeah, kind of the idea, I always saw him a little bit as a modern Odysseus, kind of on his own odyssey across the oceans.
Yeah.
For me, it just always fit that he was different.
Well, I mean, you're completely right. I mean, part of why he's called Nemo is because of Odysseus, because no one is the name Odysseus gives himself. And I think in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, it's sort of mysterious where he is from. The way he's written, he seems to be more Polish or Russian to me. But there is The Mysterious Island, which is sort of a sequel.
Follow-up.
And there it is defined that he's actually a prince from India. I think Drakkar was his name.
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
And that is, I think, how he is displayed nowadays.
Yeah. Which I think is good for representation.
Yeah, I think so too. Which also makes sense where he has the money from to actually build the Nautilus. But
exactly.
I mean, Captain Nemo is one of the most interesting characters that Jules Verne created. He's fed up with civilization, with imperialism, and he wants to do his own thing away from all the others. And he actually manages to do that. He's living from the ocean. He lives his dream more or less. But then when someone else comes and learns of the Nautilus, he is sort of forced to keep them there so that they wouldn't tell about him. I mean, he's not just a good person.
And I didn't mention it. I kind of forgot that the Nautilus is self-sufficient, self-sustainable.
Yeah.
Which is kind of an interesting idea, considering it the world we're living in today, that we would actually, a submarine that's self-sustainable is actually a pretty cool idea.
It was very ahead of its time.
Okay, is there another book we need to talk about? Because I would like to just quickly talk about some of the movie versions.
Yeah.
Is there another book we need to talk about?
Maybe well, you briefly talked about the From the Earth to the Moon and Around the Moon, which I think is maybe the fourth best known book.
Yeah.
Let's go to the movie versions.
Yeah, and kind of now that good that you mentioned it, because kind of Trip to the Moon, that would have been my first item on the movie list, because Trip to the Moon, inspired partly by the novel, is George Méliès' probably most famous movie. Kind of, at least for me, the movie that first really introduced special effects into movie history. Kind of this timeless image of the moon with a face where the bullet kind of lands
in his eye, I think.
Yeah, even though that's not part of the novel.
Yeah.
I think in the novel, they actually never land on the moon. They just travel around it. But kind of inspired by Jules Verne. I think without Jules Verne, we probably would not have special effects heavy movies. And because George Méliès was inspired by Verne to do those tricks. So that's how I'm going to remember this. And yeah, I think the second thing, kind of the big Jules Verne movement, was in the 1950s with those three very well-regarded movies. Interestingly enough, in the 2000s, they had another set of movies that kind of mirror those. They did Journey to the Center of the Earth in 2008 as well, with Brendan Fraser. Mm-hmm. And then they did kind of a sequel to that one called The Mysterious Island with The Rock, where they kind of used the Mysterious Island plot and some ideas of the whole Nemo story. And Around the World, that was done in 2004 with Jackie Chan as Passepartout. But that was definitely the weakest one. I think they were not sure what went wrong with that one, but kind of compared to the one from the 50s with David Niven, or even the TV show from 1989 with Pierce Brosnan, I think that's just a really, really bad version of that story.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of, wondering when the next Jules Verne Renaissance happens. Because I think as fun as Journey to the Center of the Earth and so was, I think you could do a really cool 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea movie at the moment. Mm-hmm. Kind of with modern special effects, if you get a good cast together.
Yeah.
I think I remember that some director was working on it, but I'm not sure who it was. I think there's probably projects around. Wouldn't be surprised if there were not. But yeah, I kind of want to see another, or kind of a new version of Captain Nemo. I think that could be fun.
Yeah. Do you remember The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? There was Captain Nemo as well, and it was a nice version of Captain Nemo in the Nautilus.
I think in the comics, yes, but the movie was terrible.
Yeah, it was terrible, but it was well made. And
I really enjoyed the comic book, but the movie was terrible. The movie was just terrible.
Yeah, the comic is a lot.
The movie was terrible. Yeah, the movie was terrible.
Yeah, no, I agree. I really would love a new Jules Verne movie. I even would like a TV series. I could imagine a TV series that kind of combines different Jules Verne stories together. That could be fun.
Yeah.
Taking Phileas Fogg and make him the main character throughout all of the stories, with maybe Robur the Conqueror as the main antagonist or something. That could be fun. But yeah, I think it's time.
I mean, I would definitely, if I had to make Around the World in 80 days, I think my first instinct would actually be to do it as a TV show.
Oh, yeah.
But just that book, kind of focus a little bit more on the characters and the journey than the book does. Other than that, I can see some kind of a story of an adventuring party going on all these different adventures. Mm-hmm. Kind of the same adventuring party traveling to the center of the earth, meeting up with Captain Nemo, and kind of or a balloon ride and things like that. And I think these Journey 2 movies in the 2000s with Brendan Fraser and The Rock, they actually did that. I think at the end of the second movie, they kind of tease the Journey to the Moon.
Ah, okay.
So they're doing that as a movie, or we're trying to do that as a movie series, or maybe it was just a stupid joke. But yeah, I can see that working if in the right hands with the right budget. I think that might actually work. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, one little movie I always like to watch is In Search of the Castaways. I could think about that, combining that one with a couple of different other plots of Jules Verne. I mean, why not combine Journey to the Center of the Earth with The City Under the Ground? Or was it The Girl from Underground? It was The Girl from Underground, wasn't it?
I think it was Girl from, yeah. Kind of bringing Atlantis into the mix and stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, of course, because it can be in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and in Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we probably have to do it. We have to create a Jules Verne TV show.
Yeah, I think we need to write something up.
We need to write that. We need to write it immediately. Yeah, we're gonna start today.
Yeah,
we're gonna start today. Yeah. Okay. Any last words about Jules Verne before we wrap up today's episode?
Yeah. Well, we concentrated today for his Voyages Extraordinaires. He wrote a lot of other novels as well. One of the coolest is The Courier of the Tsar, Mikhail Strogoff. But this is not part of today's episode.
Yeah, I mean, he wrote over 50 novels or so. So, yeah, quite prolific. I think our main goal today was don't forget Jules Verne. Check out his books. They're still worth a read. And we found them really inspiring when we were kids. And we hope you do too.
Yeah, and you can read them for free. They are available in the Project Gutenberg as ebooks.
Yeah.
Or if you have an Amazon Kindle, they are free as well on Amazon. So there is no reason not to read them.
Yeah, there's going to be a link in the show notes to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then in this case, this is it for this week. This was episode 7 of Passions of the Geek. So we're really doing this, Pat. I'm proud.
Me too.
Please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast if you haven't done so. We would really appreciate it if you were to leave a review, a positive one, on iTunes. But yeah, we're on all major podcasting services. You can reach us on www.passionofthegeeks.com. Okay, take care, Pat. See you next week.
You too. See you next week. Goodbye.
And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.